Hey everybody, what's going on? This is WRL from the Planetary Workshop and the TeamLiquid.net StarCraft 2 custom games and custom maps forum. It's been a while since I made my last video tutorial, and I wanted to get a little more advanced and show you how to recolor a lot of the textures that come in the StarCraft 2 Galaxy Editor. Just so you know, this is going to require that you have Photoshop installed and also require that you have a Windows-based computer. There's probably ways to do it via Mac and to do it also via GIMP, which is kind of a Photoshop equivalent that's free. Photoshop's obviously very expensive, but if you have it, it's pretty easy to make some pretty cool effects. So if you don't have it, maybe you just turn that off now and forget about it. It's going to make it a little difficult if you don't have it. So starting off with this map that we have here, obviously this is not a real map. This is just a Castanar tile set. I've only got two textures set up here. But let's just say, for instance, that in my vision, I didn't want any light tiles like this. I only wanted darker tiles. But maybe I liked the shape of this this texture, where there's like the larger squares as compared to these tiny little tiles down here. And there's no way in the editor for me to take this lighter Castanar tiles texture and make it darker. I have to make a custom texture for myself. And to do that, I'm going to need to download a couple things. The first thing you're going to want to download is called MPQ Editor. And let me pull up my browser real quick. And you'll see right here, you can just do a quick Google search for it. You'll find it. Just type in Google MPQ Editor, and I think this one's one I downloaded. There's a couple different links here. They all work as long as it has access to the StarCraft 2 MPQ files. You'll be able to get what you need to get. So just download it, install it. I've already got mine installed. The second thing you'll need is the NVIDIA texture tools for Adobe Photoshop. This allows you to edit what are called DDS files, which are the file types that are used for all the textures in StarCraft 2. To find this, again, you can just search for DDS Photoshop, and it should be the first thing that comes up. Yeah, NVIDIA texture tools for Adobe Photoshop, and there we are. Download based on whether you're 32-bit or 64-bit computer. Again, I've already installed this before, so I don't need to do it now. But just click on the link that applies to you. It's an automated installer, and you'll be good to go from there. So going back to my map, let's say that I have everything I want in place. This is the map I want. I'm not going to be able to edit anything until I close the editor, because all the textures are currently in use by the editor. So I'm just going to save it up and close out. And now I'm going to want to open up my MPQ editor. The MPQ editor does not open unless you have closed out of StarCraft 2 and out of your editor. It can't access the files it needs to. So navigate to wherever you've installed it. I just searched for it over my other window. Pull it over here to see. This is what it looks like when you first open it. And you're going to want to navigate to the StarCraft 2 MPQ file. So we go to File, Open MPQ, and I do believe it's located under your C drive. And StarCraft 2. Oh, I think it's under mods, actually. Yeah, so you're looking for your core.SC2 mod. That's the main file that the Melee maps use to access all their textures. So it's under Program Files, StarCraft 2 mods, core.SC2 mod, and under here we're going to look for base.mpq. Has all the stuff we need. Open that up. Oh, you know what? That's not the right one, I don't think. Yeah, actually, that was the wrong one. I'm going to close out of that one. The one we're actually looking for is, go back to mods. We're actually looking for liberty.sc2 mod and base.sc2 assets, I believe. You can see how big it is. That's how we know that's the one we want. It's gigantic. It's 2.5 gigs. So open that up. And you can see it starts off a little drop down here. Actually, maybe you can't really see it. Let me bring the window a little smaller. You can see assets, and there's a bunch of models in here, which if you had a model editor, you could actually import some custom models or export the models already in the game and mess around with them. I'm just going to talk about textures for today. So if we click on the textures folder, this is basically every single texture used by every doodad, every terrain texture, every cliff in the game. There's a whole crap load of textures in here. And most of the time it's pretty obvious what you're looking for. In this case, I was looking for some Castanar textures, and this is going to start off under Castanar. Here we are, Castanar. I think panels was the one I'm looking for. And I can't remember, but all right. So you'll see these are actually all the textures for that tile set, all 8 of them. There's grading, grid, blah 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 blah. There's a normal texture. The normal is your bump map for the texture, which we're not going to actually play with because all we're doing is adjusting the color. We don't need to adjust the bump map. So I'm going to export panels. Panels is the one that I want to make a little darker to match the tiles that are also in that tile set. So to export it, I'm actually going to export both because it's good to have a reference file so that you can try to get the colors to match properly. So I've control clicked to get both of them selected, right click and go to extract, and by default it drops it in this folder. That's fine. And it's prompting me to want to, I've already exported them before, so I'm just going to overwrite the ones I've already exported. It takes just a second. And now they've been exported. Once you've exported the files you want, the first thing you want to do is just close your MPQ editor. It doesn't need to stay open anymore. And you want to open up Photoshop now. And I already have it open, because if I didn't, it would take 12 years. And so now what I want to do is I want to open up those two files that I just exported. So I'm going to file open. And because I've installed that extension for Photoshop from NVIDIA, it allows me to open up these DDS files, which previously I could not. You'll see I've already navigated to it properly. And I've already exported a ton of custom textures that I messed around with, but I'm just going to find the ones that I want now, which is Castanar tiles and Castanar panels. I'm going to open up both of those. So yeah, so you can see this is what the texture file looks like. Let me bring my tools in here so you can see a little better. All right, so I'm going to want to try to match this to look kind of like these tiles. There's a pretty easy way to do that without having to be a master of Photoshop, and I'll show you how to do that right now. The first thing I always do is I just take a snippet of the one texture that I'm trying to match, and I just do Control C to copy it, Control V to paste it, and I move it to the side a little bit. So having this, it gives me a sort of a basis for what I want my new texture to look like. And then I'll show you my layers. I'm going to select the right layer. You don't want to edit this top layer. I just paste it in. We want to make sure we edit the bottom layer. And to get that color, it's already about the same hue, which hue is like the base color. Like it's a blue, is a red, is a green. That's what your hue is. It's just that the brightness is pretty a little bit too bright. So usually I always use a combination of levels, curves, and hue and saturation to get what I want. In this case, I'm probably going to start with levels. Bring over the levels menu. The levels, it shows you where all the color sort of resides in the document right now. So I got a bunch of these darker grays in here. This is black, this is white. Most of the texture is this darker gray. I want to make that even darker. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm probably going to lower the white point. Actually, not that. I want to increase the dark point. And it's going to start to darken the texture a little bit. I want those cracks to be just as dark as the cracks on the other texture. And it's starting to get there. I don't want to go too far because otherwise it's going to start to get a little bit too dark and you're starting to lose a little bit of the definition of the texture. So now I want to grab this gray slider and start dragging that down even a little farther. And you can see that it's about the right darkness now. It doesn't match perfectly. I'm actually just going to adjust it a little bit to my liking. Just because the texture itself is it's a different, this has got more patterns on it than this does. it's gonna be hard to get it to look. If I did have it that dark, it would look kind of crappy. I mean, if it's all the way down here, just about right. It just doesn't look very good. But I'll put it somewhere around here. All right, so it's about the right brightness I want now. I'm just going to adjust the hue on it a little bit to make it slightly green and blue like it the top texture is. So I go to image, use image adjustments, hue saturation. You can just sort of adjust. You can just kind of play with the slider a little bit. See what happens when you crank the saturation, because you know where the different colors reside. It looks like I can't really get the color that I want here. So in this case, what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to create a duplicate of this layer. I'm going to right click on the background and go to duplicate layer. It's actually asking me over here what to name it. I was going to hit OK. So I got a duplicate right on top, and I'm just going to make this put this down to about 50%. What that's going to let me do is it'll add a slight change. If I make a big change on this layer, it'll only make a slight effect to the overall image because it's only at 50% visibility. So go back to hue and saturation, and I'm going to colorize it. And by colorizing it, it's going to let me make everything one hue, which this basis that we're working off of, it looks like it's all kind of like a teal color, which I'm going to try to find. Well, that looks about right. And maybe might be a little bit too saturated. Maybe put something like right about there. So it's not perfect. If I had a little more time, I'd work on it. I'm just adjusting the lightness to try to get that effect that I want. So it's pretty close. If I had more time, I would definitely fine-tune it to make it look a lot better. But just for the purpose of this tutorial, that's what we're going to do. So yeah, next thing I'm going to do is I have to delete this reference texture that I was using, because you don't want it to show up on your texture. Delete, yes. And then I usually want to merge my layers, so go up to layer and flatten image, and now you only have one layer. And now we want to save it. So go to File, Save. It's going to bring up this window right here. I've already put in the settings that I use normally. By default, it's going to probably be fine. You want to make sure this is 2D texture. You do not want bitmaps. I'm not even sure what they are. Someone can maybe tell me, but it does not matter for what we're doing here. And most of the time, you're going to want to use DXT3. For a terrain texture, DXT5 works, but it doesn't really matter. They're all 8 bits per pixel, or whatever 8 BPP is. You want to use DXT3 because there's a lot of textures that use an explicit alpha. Especially if you're modifying textures for like terrain cliffs, you'll want to use that explicit alpha, otherwise it won't work. So DXT3, going to go ahead and hit save. Wait a second, it's going to, and we should be saved now. So now we're going to want to open up the editor again. And it's just loading up on my other screen right now, you can't see. Just give it a second. Always takes an eternity when I have XSplit running.